I spent a couple of hours or so taking apart and cleaning the one-shot lubrication system for the Bridgeport. That included this metering block. This is essentially a distribution system for the oil to apply it to 7 or 8 different locations. In each of the outlets, there are individual meters, and each meter is a one-way valve in one sense, and they are also sized to proportionally deliver the right amount of oil to each location. Then attached to each meter is a length of tubing that is then placed exactly where you want to lubricate something. These pieces are made of brass and aluminum. Over tightening them would be a mistake and could be rather costly. Each meter is about $15, and the junction block is another $50. And that doesn't even include the cost of the compression fittings themselves. Since each location is tied to a particularly sized meter, I made sure to keep things arranged exactly as they came apart to ensure that the proper amount of lubrication was being applied. For each part, the meters, the tubes, the block, I cleared out as much of the old oil as I could with compressed air, and in some cases I used some solvent. That worked very well, and I was able to confirm that every piece of the system was clear and unclogged. I start assembling the pump itself by first putting the plunger back together, which, aside from being pretty filthy and having a repaired crack in the tank, the pump assembly itself was in pretty good shape. Again, here everything was cleaned with a degreaser, a wire wheel, and in some of these parts, a solvent was used. The piston for the pump, along with a spring, fits into a tube. A ball bearing one-way valve is then screwed to the bottom of the tube, encapsulating the piston and the spring. When you use the handle to pull up on the piston, the ball bearing allows oil to be sucked up into the tube. when the handle is released, the pressure from the piston forces the ball bearing to seal the valve, and that forces the oil into the tube leading to the top of the oiler. It's a very simple mechanism with few moving parts, which might explain why this pump is still working after 45 years. On the bottom of the valve is a 3-layer filter designed to keep any foreign matter from entering the pump, which would likely clog one of these oil lines. The one part I couldn't reuse was the gasket between the tank and the lid. It was made of cork, and I didn't feel like waiting for one to be shipped, so I opted to just make one. I first marked an outline and then used that as a guide to cut the outside of the gasket. With the gasket temporarily in place, I can kind of figure out where I want to cut the inside to make clearance for the pump. I also needed to cut holes for the screws, but I didn't have a gasket punch, so I decided to go ahead and make one. I had this piece of scrap round bar that would be perfect for making this punch. I placed it in the 3-jaw and faced it off before cleaning up a little bit of the length. Thank you again for all of you that have subscribed to the channel. If you're not a subscriber and you like this kind of content, please consider clicking that subscribe button. And don't forget that bell icon so you'll never miss when a new video drops. I needed to cut the nose of the punch at a taper. I rotated my compound around to something that looked like it would work. But after a little while, it was kind of obvious that this was not going to be the right angle. I needed something that was a lot less shallow. So I went ahead and pulled the compound around to an angle that was probably about halfway between where it was and 90 degrees. That seemed to work a lot better. I continued to turn it down until the nose was about 7/32 of an inch in diameter. I then first used a centering drill and then drilled it out with a 7/32 inch drill bit. I then filed it a bit smooth to deburr the outside and to make sure that there was a nice sharp edge. With the tool complete, I can now use it to punch the holes in the new gasket. And now I can go ahead and assemble the pump to the tank. I don't have a small enough funnel to fit into the fill spout of the tank, which I ignored, so I tried it anyway, and I made a mess, which was just as well because it was here that I realized the filter had fallen off of the bottom of the pump valve. I didn't fit the shell that the filter fits in back onto the valve very well the last time, so I made sure that it was staying on this time. And before putting it all back together, I went ahead and put some whey oil right into the tank this time. Pulling up on the handle, I can hear the air bleeding from the outlet tube just before oil started oozing out all over the top again. But it's a sure sign that the pump is working. That's a good thing. I want to make sure that all these oil lines are truly clear. Plus, I don't think it would hurt very much to prime them a bit with some oil. I hooked up the outlet to the pump directly to feed the metering block. After making sure all the fittings were appropriately tight, I can then operate the pump a couple of times and see if oil starts coming through the ends of the tubes. It took a little while and a little forced pressure on the piston, but sure enough, we do have oil oozing out of the end of all of the oil lines. So this test was a success. Now that I have that little peace of mind, I can go ahead and start reassembling the oiler onto the knee. I start by attaching the pump itself to the side of the knee with these two slotted machine screws. Then a piece of copper tube leads to this four-way junction. Besides the input from the pump, there will be one line that connects to the left column way, a second line that then travels across through the knee to the right column way, and then the last one is an outlet that feeds the metering block. The lines to each of the columnways are attached to these elbow fittings. With the oil line connected to the right side columnway, all of the knee lubrication is now in place. And that's it for this video. The oiler is clean, back together, and operational. One more thing is checked off that list. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment, and those thumbs up sure do help with the YouTube analytics. We'll see you on the next one.